Gladiator helmet. At long last. This one has been a very, very, very long time coming. I've been meaning to get started on this one for almost a year now, and just life has gotten in the way. Things here at Thack Ironworks have been busy, and which is a good thing, but it's just been, it's like my entire year has been hijacked. And finally I am getting to this one. So, what I want to make, 30 years ago, I made this helmet out of brass, Gladiator helmet, Mermillo. I should really do my research before I do these videos. I think that's the type of gladiator that wears this helmet here. Always thought it's a very iconic, very aesthetically pleasing sort of shape. And early on in my armoring career, I decided I was going to tackle it, and I think I bit off a little bit more than I could chew. It was a pretty complex shape to make, and it came out okay. Workmanship is certainly not up to my standards of today. The biggest criticism I would have right off the bat is I made the bowl too big. So in the one that I'm going to be making now, I'm going to bring the size down a little bit to be a little bit more realistic, a little bit more ergonomic, and base everything off of that. Now, if you are a fan and you watch my videos, about a year ago we did a video in preparation for this one, making a cauldron out of a single piece of bronze. So taking a disc of silicon bronze, 1/4 inch thick, and this I believe is about 8 inches in diameter. I think the cauldron we made was about 6 or 7, can't remember specifically, and realized then that the size wasn't quite big enough. So I determined then if I was going to do a bowl to fit over the head, that I would need to have something roughly this size. That was my calculations as of last year. Hopefully I'm right. Then a few months ago we decided we were going to do an experiment with a new unit that we got from Beaver for smelting bronze or other metals actually, and we had some crucibles and we made a little mold and tried to pour something like this, which didn't go that well, but that's just some hiccups as far as learning how to cast properly. I think what we need to do is cast it in a two-sided mold. Anyway, I've decided rather than try to get that process all figured out and then do the bowl out of that, we're just going to pretend that that worked out, and we're going to use this piece here that is ready-made, and I need to get started on this. Spiritually, this is a necessity for me. So we're going to heat this up and start pounding it out into a bowl shape. Without further ado, let us begin. Here we go. Alright, so step one is complete in that I've taken my 1/4 inch thick plate and I've just hammered a bevel around the outside, bringing it down to about roughly half, so about 1/8 of an inch, or say 1 millimeter. I've decided 99% of the world is metric, with the exception of Burma and some other country I'm not going to name. And so right now, this thing is at 23 centimeters. When I started, it was at 22, and just doing the edges there has grown. And for you Americans, 9 inches is what we've got now. So this is our starting disc. From here, we're now going to heat up the center and start dishing it out. So hot dishing, thick, and it's going to thin out and create the bowl. Stand by. Let's go. Alright, so I've done one pass now, and it's got a nice cereal bowl sort of look to it. We've got a ways to go, so just for fun, let's measure this. So centimeter wise, we're now 21 across the lip there, or just over 8 inches. Just about 8 inches, I guess you could say. Yeah, just over 8. So that's pass number one. Still a long way to go. So pass number 2 completed, and we're probably an hour and a half into the process. I keep getting interrupted, so I don't even get a straight run at this, but let's say we're about an hour and a half into it now. So I would say we're about half of the shape or depth that we need to get to. Let's pull in the other one. So as you remember, this bowl is too big. I need something smaller, but I also need to achieve some depth there. So I'm probably at about half the depth that I need minimally. And this thing needs to just grow in all forms. I'm keeping it round at this point, but at a certain point I will start defaulting towards the oval shape that will actually fit onto my head. Should note with bronze, it's silicon bronze is the material that I'm using, and I'm heating it up in a coal forge, which is a little bit sketchy in that it's very easy to actually overheat this stuff and then it's just going to disintegrate. So I have to be quite vigilant as I'm heating it up. I'm bringing it up to an orange heat. I'm just watching as it's in the fire, bring it up to some color and just make sure I don't let it get too hot. If it gets up into a yellow type heat, it's a split second away from the whole thing disintegrating or a hole forming in it, and that is certainly not something we want to do. I guess I should throw the tape measure on it just for posterity. What do you guys think of my little pink seamstress's tape measure? Just happened to be what I had in it. That's metric. 20 centimeters across there, which is still just under 8 inches. So the diameter has shrunk ever so slightly in that last pass, and it's probably going to stay about that because we need that opening to be able to fit over a head. So basically from here on out, the idea is that this needs to get twice as deep as it is right now, and it will, in that, as this thins out, it's about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a millimeter, 2 millimeters, something like that thick right now. It needs to get about half the thickness of that by the time we're done. So that should change the size to what we need. We need to get it thinner and bigger, deeper, longer, all these things. So this shape is evolving. Let's see if it works. Exciting. All right, so now let's measure circumference, since we need this to fit around my head. And we are currently at, looks like right on 60 centimeters. And my head might be, looks like somewhere around 58, 59. So theoretically this should fit onto my head, but it's not going to be the exact shape, so it will not yet. Still very thick in here, and I've left it thick like that on purpose. The shape is starting to come out now. Depth-wise, we need to get maybe another inch deeper. It needs to get just a little bit longer and a little bit wider. I've, as I said, left this thick around the edge. You remember when I started this disc, it was 1/4 inch thick, and I brought it down to about half that and just left it. So this gives a solid rigidity to the circumference here, and then as I'm working it gives it, the fact that it's a little smaller than it needs to be helps me hold everything into place. It's kind of like a balloon, which has thicker around the rim there, something that holds it together where all the strain is as this thing gets blown up. Yeah, and speaking of balloon knots, these provocative looking hammers, something that you might think it would be more suitable to a boudoir, are what I'm using here. They're just modified ball peen hammers that I forged out to be able to reach in and get into position. Started out with this one, which is my heavier one. Now that it's starting to get thinner, I have to get more cautious because you can actually push too much and break through. So I'm using this guy, which can come right around to a tight bowl and not really interfere with that. So shape is coming along well. I think I've probably got another hour of hot work to get it to the rough dimensions that I need, and then there's going to be a lot of refining. But I've been working now probably about 4 hours on this totally, and my recent shoulder injury, I can feel my shoulder starting to flare up. I got some inflammation happening here. So I think I'm gonna go ice my shoulder, and we'll leave this for today. We'll join you in just a second on the video, but it'll probably be a week in my life. So see you soon. Okay, so let's say 7 hours in, somewhere around there, and making progress, but it's taking a long time. So I've gotten to a point now where it pretty much would fit on my head. It's just not quite fitted. Pretty much got the shape. What I've been doing in the last little bit is working on the ball. I realized I was starting to get fairly thin at the top. I had sufficient shape or depth there, but I think it was thinning out. I had a lot of thickness here, and you'll remember that my edge was quite thick and smaller in circumference than it was supposed to be. Still hasn't quite reached it. So what I did is switch tactics and started working on the ball, where this area here, I'm basically getting on there, and that is stretching out this way, also this in other directions, but as opposed to how I was dishing before, I was realizing to get these sides, I didn't want my shape to continue mushrooming out wider and wider. The shape needs to come down this way with very little extra width happening here. So, working on the ball, hitting straight on like that. I'm basically just drawing out as a blacksmith and just thinning the metal, and it's moving this way. So I'm starting to get good depth there. I just need to thin this whole area out a little bit more, and then I think it will actually fit onto my noggin pretty good. We're close to the size that we need to. I'm gonna guess another 2 to 3 hours to actually get the thinness, shape, and size, everything where we need it to be. Then I can start doing the ridges and the decorative elements into it. So carry on. Okay, so let's just talk about the two tools that we're using for this particular process. The first one is just a dishing tool, which is just a piece of pipe with a round bar on it to give it a more gentle edge. And then I've just been hot dishing into that for hours on end. Now I've moved to my 6-inch ball and working with it on here like that and hitting from the outside to bring it down. Once I've got this band sufficiently thinned out, then I will probably do, I've been working hot up till now, I'll do a cold run where I'm just planishing it over the ball, trying to get all the anomalies and get a more regular shape. It's in the right sphere at this point in time, but it still needs quite a bit of refining. Time has elapsed, and this is what I've come up with. I've now taken to spending maybe about half an hour each day doing some work on it. I'm recovering from a shoulder injury, which means I can't do prolonged hammer runs. I need to kind of keep that down to smaller bites, and so far things are happening. What I've got now is something that's about 6.5 inches. As you can see, it fits on to my head quite nicely. I basically got the size that I need now, and I've actually got more coming down than is required, but I need to bend up some rims there for the other pieces to be attached onto. I'm still, however, quite thick. I've got more material than I need. I did this a little bit, my original disc bigger, thinking that I want to do this as a kind of an experiment to see if I could move enough material to do a full Corinthian helmet, where I would have to bring this down another 5 or 6 inches. So I've still got enough material to do that. The process to do that seems to be a little bit more work than I would like. So what I'm doing is doming out from on the top here, and then also drawing out the sides and using a fullering motion to do that. If you'll come in close to my 6-inch ball, we'll take a look at that process. So what I'm trying to do is move material this way. I don't really want it to grow too much this way, but I want to move material to thin it out and get depth this way. Doing that, I do fullering with a cross peen of a hammer. There's a blacksmithing technique, and basically I put it onto the ball and just do overlapping hammer blows that are pinching it and moving it forward this way. And that thins it out while moving it in this direction. A labor-intensive process. I'm doing that cold just because doing it hot I found was too much. By the time I got it on there with the tongs, it basically had cooled off on it, the ball being a heatsink. So it's just as easy to do it cold, do a pass, it'll work hard, anneal it, do another pass, and so on and so on. The other way that I am thinning this out and achieving the appropriate dimensions is in the shot bag. Let's move over to the shot bag now. So I've gotten to the depth now where my hammer can't get in to the bottom of the bowl there. So what I have to do is take a stake and actually caveman my way. Just striking down like that. And this works quite well actually. When I get down farther on the sides and when it becomes awkward to hit straight up and down, then I can go back to my specialty hammers and I'm able to dish out that way, bringing it out to the appropriate dimensions. Let's go back to the ball again. Another technique I can use is this. Which I really enjoy, very caveman. I like that one quite a bit. So I can bring out the shape over the ball like that, and sometimes I'll use a smaller ball stake that I can get into more precise areas, but I can see from the outside specifically where I'm doing that, where it's a little harder to do the same thing from the inside and see what you're doing. You usually have to bring it over. Once I've got it like this, I've got various dints and irregularities. I'll often do a pass of planishing with the little hammer and just bringing it down onto the ball. And zillions of overlapping little hammer blows. I can then planish the surfaces. Work hardens it and I need to anneal it from time to time, but it will even things out, slowly thinning out the metal and getting to the shape that I need. So still a long ways to go. Let's see how I make out. All right, so I've got it dished to the right proportions. It's still overly thick. I'm gonna have to grind that out, but I think, you know, my experiment about having enough material to do something, I didn't want to get lost in the weeds on that one. So we're moving forward. I've laid out lines here where I'm gonna have some raised ridges and also a flare out at the bottom where the other pieces will then attach into. So everything is laid out now. It's been annealed. So onto the stake and let's start raising some features. Here we go. All right, so there is my first pass. I've just established all the lines, so now I'm gonna go in and anneal. We've got some work hardening going in. This edge, which I've got here, it's still quite thick, like 10 gauge. So I'm gonna thin that out to get me some more width to be able to rivet my pieces on. Also got some real thickness right in here, and I'm having a hard time getting the lines raised in there. So I think I'm actually going to, before I anneal, is grind a little bit of meat out of that area on either side here and see if I can then raise my lines a little bit easier after that. So you can see it ghosting out what the actual shapes are going to look like. Now there's just going to be a lot of refinement. It's a rare luxury that when making armor that your metal is actually too thick. It's usually the other way around, that you're thinning things out. By the time you start grinding and polishing, you end up with something that's dangerously thin. Here I've got ample thickness to the point that it's problematic raising these lines down here. But just taking my edge here, which was quite thick, and it was very easy with that thickness to raise a centimeter out like that. Now by thinning it out over the ball, I'm able to get the width that I'll be able to comfortably rivet the next pieces on, and thinning that out, and it's just what a luxury. I'm having the time of my life. So a lot of pounding to go to refine all this. You can see the basic shape, what is going to happen here, and fits onto my head pretty good. That's what we need to do. So what follows now is a bunch of hours of me refining all these lines. So I'm going to dismiss Eric, my cameraman. You can get out of here for now. You guys join me again. It'll be a couple seconds for you. It will be many painful hours for me. See you soon. Okay, hours have elapsed. I think, based on my math, and I'm just guesstimating here, I'm somewhere between 25 and 30 hours total on this thing right now, which I think is not bad, all things considered, for dishing this out of a flat disc. But it's starting to stretch out right now. I'm having this. It's tedious. Anyway, it's still quite thick around here, and raising that bead was a lot of effort. I've got it in place now. I've basically got everything where it needs to be, but there's still a couple distortions and stuff that I got to move out, and then it's just some endless refinement to get everything evened out, nice and sharp and crisp. So a few more hours for sure, and I'm gonna continue using the grinder here, removing some more material, bringing this down to a more reasonable weight. But I'm happy that I do have some nice thick areas. It's going to have some real structure to it. I'll just demonstrate a few of the things that I'm doing right now. I'm using my little tool here, which is called a camel toe tool. I'm not sure why and what that refers to, but this is a very useful one because it can straddle my bead on either side. So I'm just putting it onto the ball, and let me show you. Okay, so going in with just a dull cold chisel there to bulge out my line so I get a consistent thickness on the bead, top and bottom one. So that's really what I'm doing. Not really that exciting, not a very glamorous step, just a lot of hours. So why don't you join me again a few hours hence, and we'll see if we can get this thing refined. Looks kind of like an old school miner's helmet, if this was a light. It's hammered to shape now. I've got my crest base hammered in there, which the crest will be able to come off of. Got my raised ridges. I've got these things here to add the extra pieces on. I've ground away most of the extra weight, so this is actually a reasonable weight now. Still a little heavier than standard, but I'm okay with that. It's going to be a good sturdy helmet. Now, what's left here is this little bulge here, and it's just crying out for some decoration. And I have decided what we're going to do for that is a lion. So, join us in the next video. We will do that as its own little video, make a tiny little lion head on there. It's just a wee tiny lion head. But in the meantime, comments, this is the start of this helmet. Now we still have various pieces to go, so we've decided to break it up into various chunks. Also, business-wise, Thack Ironworks is extremely busy this year, and we're having a hard time trying to jam things in here. So I was able to get it to this point, and hopefully in the next month we can get the face done and start moving on to the next thing. So please stay tuned, comments, like, do all kinds of YouTube stuff. I will see you in the next video. I can't wait to see the next stage in this process. That's it for me. Back out. See ya!